because a lot of times I deal with women. I always call out the women who want to be married, but there's a whole bunch of women out there that don't desire to be married, but still need to be good women.
Right.
And they're like being missed. So I do think that I, for myself, need to step back a little bit, because it works for everyone. To become the best version of yourself is what we all should be doing. So you're exactly right with that. And I appreciate that you said that, because I never thought about it like that. You know, I just think the ultimate goal is the nuclear family. So I'm always pushing towards that. But there is a way that we can speak to women that don't know right today that they want or even need to be married, and still make them the best version of themselves, to one day that they may see that they're here to be the purpose of being married, and to procreate with a man. So
Absolutely.
I
Yes.
definitely appreciate you saying that.
Well, let me ask you, because the topic today is female-minded men. And the thumbnail, I'm not sure if you saw it, was a rapper who is a trans image type situation. And I also had dropped the link in the chat earlier about the top 25 most famous trans people, of which Dwayne Wade's son was number 4 on the list. Caitlyn Jenner was number 1 on the list, and so forth. So we have a multi-pronged approach on how we're being attacked as a people, and the problems that we're going to have to overcome, and the challenges that the Black family face. And the thing is that, you know, you seem to be of a woman that come from an older school mindset, and who understood that a woman can't raise a boy to be a man, that that boy needs male influences in his life, especially once he start getting at the age of puberty, when he's getting his masculine nature is coming about, where he wants to buck. Back in the day, grandparents used to say, you're smelling yourself, things of that nature. And that's really where it's no different than when a woman first have a flowering, have a first period. When a young girl have a first period, she is, thank you, Les Campbell, she is nurtured and embraced and educated as to the changes that are going on in her body, and to make her feel good and positive about that. But there isn't anything really that offers young boys, when they're coming into their young nature of being a masculine young boy, coming into being a man, to really help him develop and be positive in his masculinity. Usually because he is in a household with a mother, and if she has more than one children, she will try to suppress that behavior, because she doesn't know how to deal with it. A masculine child, especially if the mother is 5'4", 5'5", and now you have a 12-year-old that's 5'8", he's bigger than you, he weighs more than you, he's stronger than you. And the words that you used to control him before are not having an effect. And the hits that you used to give him, he just shakes them off.
Yeah.
So what tends to happen is that the woman will try to suppress as much as possible that masculine nature. But now he also has society feeding him another nature, a feminine nature. And we're having more and more young men adopting that feminine lifestyle. And those who don't learn how to really deal with their masculine energy, don't understand how to think problems through in critical evaluation, and going into that silent mode. How most men, when they solve problems, they go into a silent mode. And sometimes the wife might think, well, she did something wrong, or something is going on, and she's tried to elicit what the problem is. And the husband will say, honey, give me a moment. I just need to work this out. I'll come back to you. But our young men don't learn that. And in their teenage years, they're expressing the female reaction that they've grown up with in the household through their masculinity, and it's coming out as violence. So on one hand, we have violent young men that don't understand how to deal with their masculinity. And on the other hand, we have other young men who are making a transition into full-blown femininity at some point. So I would like to get your feedback on this topic, and how do you suggest we tackle that?
Okay, so there's a couple things that I would do. So guess what? It's not a surprise anymore that the men may not be in the home. So for women to say, "Oh, I didn't know it would happen this way," or for them to think that they can even teach the young men how to be men, that's a joke. That's not happening. So since we're aware of the situation, we should definitely try to build the relationships, even if the dad is not in the home, even if there's a child support order. I don't care what it is. I think women and men should build relationships, or women should foster relationships for the men and their boy children, even if he is broke. The men, even if he has all these excuses and all these things coming against him, the women should make sure that that boy child knows who his dad is, if that's possible. And I think they should basically push a relationship for those two to grow together. And I think that would change both of the men, the young boy and the dad's life. And then after that, I think a co-parenting situation that would be the result of all that. But I would definitely tell a woman to push the relationship. Find daddy if you can. Find the baby's father. Make a relationship. Make him be in this young man's life if you can. If that can't happen, okay. Now, the next thing, if you can't do that, the second thing I would do is I would make sure that young man, because I can't do it, and I'm aware that I can't do it, I would make sure that young man has some kind of either military school or some kind of discipline in schooling or education, or some mentor program within. For me, it would be a church or some kind of spiritual environment. I would not let my child be raised by the world, because the world
Well,
has nothing to offer.
let me interject here for a moment. Do we still have military schools?
It doesn't have to, yeah, we do, but it doesn't have to be a military school, but it could be like, sometimes we have what a Christian school, or you can send them, yeah, something based like that.
Well,
Or
I mean, and I'm going to challenge you at this point because, I find that Christianity has dropped the ball when it comes to upholding the tenets that once made not only Christianity, but our Black community strong as a people. Because we espouse our belief in God and Christ, but we don't have any discipline in adhering ourselves to those tenets. We just like to be able to get the recognition that we're a Christian, so I'm a nice person, so treat me good. But we find that there are too many single mothers in the church, and the church doesn't speak against that. They don't speak against family, they don't speak towards family and to marriage to the degree that it curtailed the behavior. They just accept the behavior. They cross the genderization of the society is fully embraced in the churches, and that should not be, because we have in America separation of church and state, and they have not been strong to stand up for what they're supposed to believe in their representation as an advocate or an emissary to Christ and God. So I will push back against that because I don't see that. So I don't see where Black boys can get the masculine nurturing that they need, obviously, other than their fathers or a stepfather that would be stepping in to be a father to that child if that woman was to be able to get married either a second time or for the first time.
okay, so I'm going to give another pushback, because the Bible and God has not changed. It's the people that are failing you, and
No,
not
I agree with you. No,
and
that
not
I agree. I fully agree that
and not
the
all
Bible has not changed.
and not all people fail. There are some people who believe and strongly hold to godly principles. Now, are they perfect? Absolutely not. Yes, there's a lot of corruption in the church, but a church is simply a building. That's not where you go to become holy.
No, we're talking.
You go
No,
to
but let's
fellowship.
okay.
I was,
Let's be honest. Let's be honest.
let's be honest.
I'm not talking about the church as a building. I'm talking about the church as the principles that represent Christ and the leaders of the church, whether it's the deacon, whether it's the ushers, and particularly the ministers and reverends who teach the doctrination and to educate and uplift the people. They themselves have dropped the ball for many decades and
I,
have not instilled in the community the tenets that once exist in the 60s, 50s, 40s going back. When we look forward from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now 2020, everything that exists in the society exists in the church. Now, this gentleman says, Mr. Larry Cash, you're wrong, Mr. Lee. I would like for him to expound upon that a little bit more so I know what he means. But as I was saying, that yes, I would like to see the church step up and be more uh, advocating to the pillars that once existed in the Black community. That as a community we really could have stood up and be strong. What what I see a lot of in our community or in the church is that everything goes. You can't criticize someone and hurt their feelings. Christ didn't care about our feelings. He cared about your spirit, your success to life. And if you had to die, meaning killing the wickedness in you now to save you later, that was necessary. But the only way you can do that is you have to bring forth the behavior that is present and you have to deal with it. And many times, we as a people, we have capitulated to the greater society and nobody's feelings can be hurt. And if your feelings can't be hurt, you're not going to fix yourself.
So, Mr. Lee, you're going back to the original problem. That is the problem.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
what we've lost the connection. We're
Absolutely.
sin is separating us from the Creator, but that doesn't mean we just stay lost. You have to get it back somewhere. You have to find your way
True.
back, and it's up to
I
us.
agree.
It's up to us to do that. But I'm not just speaking on Christianity. It could be, I said, spiritual discipline. It could be a Muslim. It doesn't really matter. We need discipline.
Right.
We need
Okay.
discipline, and boys need more discipline. And a woman can't do that. I would definitely also want to put my child in some kind of sports activity so they can have mentors, so they can know how to achieve things. Like you said, they need to know when they're wrong. They need to know how to control their emotions. Well, you didn't say all that, but I get your
I
question.
implied it. Yes.
Yeah. So that to answer the initial question that you asked, but I think I did anyway. But
You did.
you're right about the church, but we can't just live worldly. We have to get back to the Creator, because the world would have you think that you're in a good place and that you're doing the right thing. It's continuously separating us, and that's what it's supposed to do. But you should, or I should say, elders should recognize, just like you did in the 50s and 60s and 70s, it wasn't like this. And if we do have to call things to shame, and that's what you just said, but we say accountability.
Right.
And
Accountability.
that's what needs to be done. But we still have people that are not willing to subject themselves to that. And we're saying it's okay to do so. Because guess what else we're doing? We're not even pushing the proper alignment. So, if we're not doing that either. So some kind of way we got to get back. We got to get back.
Well,
For me, that you asked me, it was
absolutely.
it was my thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, one, I would say, JR, if you're listening, definitely drop Security Boss channel's link in the chat. So those who are interested or who haven't subscribed yet can go ahead and subscribe. But earlier, I was having a conversation, and I think it might have been Hank that kind of planted the seed, and I kind of ran with it. And I had suggested to Miss Fancy, Nurse Fancy, that I would like to see a forum of women like yourself and Miss Fancy and other women who are over the age of 35 who have experience, who have children, who are married and unmarried, but have the wisdom to understand what's really going on in our society, that are from this manosphere space, understand what it is that men are looking for in a wife,